Hello, I am going to give you my full name this time. My full name is Kimberly Ming Zan, and this video is made as a response to Kellyanne's Self-Love September, and this is my self-love story. And before I go into the story, I feel obligated, or I really want to tell you kind of the story behind my name. So I just said my full name is Kimberly Ming Zan. For the longest time, I just went by the name Kim because I thought that was an easier name for everybody to call me by. I thought it was more of a gender neutral name. I went through this tomboyish phase in which I rejected anything feminine and anything girly, but eventually I kind of came to embrace my entire name. But anyway, let me start with my Chinese name, which is Ming Zan. Zan is the character in Mandarin Chinese. It's actually pronounced Zhen. So there's a J sound to it, but I don't know why Taiwan has this weird spelling system, so it just ended up being TS. But yeah, it's actually Zhen. And then my second character, which is my first name, is Ming. And Zhen is a really cool first name, and I'm just really proud of it, and I'm really proud of my mom marrying my dad because this is one of the coolest Chinese surnames that you're ever gonna get. Zhen means to fight or war or battle, so you can use it as a verb or a noun, but it basically means to fight. And Ming, my first name, means clever, smart, fast, and agile. So I always thought that my parents gave me a warrior princess's name, and I just didn't really kind of feel an ownership to that name until I really began to love myself for who I am. And and then my English name, Kimberly, my mom picked it out of a book that contains like a collection of English names, and she picked it because she thought it was very different from a lot of the popular English names in Taiwan at the time, like Tina and Tiffany. Those are the cutesy ones that were really popular, but my mom gave me the name Kimberly. So, and she liked it because it meant the person or the girl or the woman, the person who grew up on royal grass. So if you think about it, I really do have a name of a warrior princess. Some kind of a royal fighter. Um, um, yeah. Yeah, so I thought I would share that with you first. But really, the story I want to tell, there's so many different journeys that I made with my self-love journey and so many different aspects of it. But the story I want to tell today is kind of what I've been some of the issues I've been going through right now. And I decided that usually I'm a little bit of a babbler when it comes to making videos, but I'm just gonna not edit this video at all. I just want to let the story come out, just give you the raw stuff, like just as I'm processing the story, as I'm trying to tell the story, as I'm trying to kind of work through these issues, you're gonna kind of see that process. You're gonna be on the journey with me, and I decided not to edit. One of the reasons why is because I'll explain this later. Everything is gonna come together, but yeah, I think that's all the context I need to give. Okay, so I should say though, this is kind of the once upon a time of my entire self-love narrative. Everything actually started with me purchasing a reading from Kellyanne, and I actually didn't really have self-love in my vocabulary at the time. At the time, I just really want to change. I just feel shitty all the time about myself, and I thought I was just kind of paralyzed by fear of judgment and fear of fear of challenging myself, just a lot of social insecurities and social anxieties. But then I think I remember I wanted to purchase the Funeral of Fear reading from Kellyanne because I wanted to work with my fears. But then Kellyanne was like, oh, you should give this self-love reading a try, and you should, kind of look into loving yourself more and feeling more compassionate with yourself. So I was like, I don't know any better. Okay. And that was the most wonderful thing that I've ever done. And ever since then, I kind of started to tell my story in the way that was helping me in terms of when it comes to loving myself more. And that was really the starting point when I really started to work with the stories that I tell myself, work with the stories that I had, and kind of reframe it in a more positive way. But oh my god, okay, this is not the point of the video. It is, but the story I want to tell is I want to tell you the story of how I immigrated from Taiwan to Canada, and how I was an immigrant and how I was an ESL student, and how that really affected me when I was growing up, on my journey of self-love, and how it still kind of affects me now. And originally I decided that I wanted to write a blog post about this because I feel like that's kind of writing textually, like writing things down, that's probably a better way for me to tell my story, because the story will be much more coherent, it's much more organized, I can come up with a narrative with much better language and things like that. But like I said, I kind of just want to do this on camera and just tell the story raw and just not edit and just not worry so much, because the reason why I started on this particular sort of vein or this route of my self-love journey is because I've been making more videos and posting more videos on my tarot channel, and increasingly I'm starting to notice that I have this tendency to want everything in my video to be perfect. I want my speech to be perfect. I want my verbal delivery to be perfect. I want all the words to fall into their right place. And on top of that, kind of this desire to have this perfect delivery, to creatively express myself in the perfect way. On top of that, I'm also extremely, extremely self-conscious about my grammar. And I think this comes from my my experiences as an ESL student, English as a second language student, because I wasn't born in Canada, I was born in Taiwan. So I had to learn English when I immigrated to Canada, and one of the prominent fears that I had as a teenager was my grammar wasn't good, my grammar wasn't good, my pronunciation was good, my English wasn't good, I couldn't speak, or I couldn't speak properly, I couldn't speak like everybody else. So that was one of the most prominent fear that I had. And the more I explored my tendencies and the things that I was feeling when I was making these videos, the more I started to really want to look into my experiences as an ESL student, because I feel like this was something that I haven't really touched when it comes to working with my self-love issues, because I worked I went through body image issues, like things like not being skinny enough, not fitting this particular sort of body image, looking too young, because I'm 25 years old and I still look like a high school kid, and sometimes people might think my full-time job is an English tutor and I run my own business, and it's a pretty cool thing to do, to run your own business and to manage your own time and stuff like that. But there are times where people will kind of cast me this questioning glance and just be like, oh, you look so young, and then maybe it was just me trying to, it was just me sort of projecting my own fear onto them. But I almost feel like every time they ask me that, I just feel like they're also questioning my ability to teach, my ability to be or function as an adult. So there's a lot of issues with that, looking really young, and or younger than my actual age, or how people perceive me, fear of judgment. So went through a lot of that when it comes to self-love, and went through a lot of relationship stuff. So those things are the things I actively worked with, and kind of just have been ongoingly just working with myself with those. But I just never really tapped into my sort of this language part of my sort of self-love journey slash identity as a person, so I want to tell that story. So why don't I start at the beginning? I feel like I've been looping, just talking in a loop, but yeah, I hope you enjoy the story. So when I was 13 years old, I immigrated to Canada, British Columbia, Vancouver. It's a pretty place, with my family. So at first, only my mother and my brother came with me, and my father came like 3 years later because he had to, we needed like a stable income, and he had to work, and he had to sort of finalize his work stuff. And just want to say that I really admire my dad because I know this immigration experience impacted on him a lot, because I know like it was a joint decision made by my dad and my mom. They both wanted to come here. It wasn't just, the typical story of like, oh, the parents came here for the kids and then they sacrificed everything, blah blah blah. They actually wanted to come here too, and then it took my dad just a few more years to get things ready, when it comes to like job and stuff. But he eventually came because he couldn't bear being apart from us. So he eventually came, and I'm really, really grateful for that, because a lot of the immigrant families that you see, at least in my community, most of the time the father is just absent. And I just feel really lucky that my dad wants to be here, and then he's willing to start over in the way that he has to look for a new job. He has to find a new way to support his family and try to, do all those things. So I'm really grateful for that. And for me, I grew up in a very supportive family. But it's just the natural sort of the expected inevitable things that come with immigrating to a new culture, with a new language, with a new set of with like these new environment, and just a different way of living. And I really had to cope with that, especially in the language department, because when I was in Taiwan, I was really good at writing, and I was one of those kids where every time we had a writing class, the teacher would be like, "Oh, Kim, like, do you mind if I read your essay or read your narrative out loud and just share it with the class because you're so good?" So I was like a grade 6, right? I was like really proud of myself about that. I was a writer, and it was really exciting. And I remember my dream at the time was I wanted to become the next J.K. Rowling, and I wanted to write the next best fantasy book. Just because just storytelling and words intrigued me so much, even just back then. Yeah. On that note, I think we all have we're all kind of like have this calling ever since we were kids. I think we sort of intuitively know what we want to do in life, if you pay attention to it. And I'm really, really lucky and grateful that my parents, they're the most not stereotypical Asian parents that you ever see. Like, when you think of the stereotypical Asian parents, you would think that they're probably very strict. They're really strict with your schoolwork. They want to just pack you after school, with just extracurricular activities. They want to develop your talents. They're really like traditional, conservative, blah blah blah. I mean, not all Asian parents are like that, but it's kind of sad but true that that's kind of still the general dynamic. But my parents are really cool. They're actually the cool parents. They're super supportive. They actually gave me a lot of room to make my own decisions when I was growing up, and that was one of the things that I really, really appreciated now as an adult. Just because if they hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't really be who I am today. So I just want to put it out there. My parents are super chill and super cool, and they're one of those like, they're just really, really special. Like, and I love them to death. Where was I? Language. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then I came here, and I was saying like, writing and language and words, they were my forte. They were my thing. I think they were like a huge part of me that defined me as a person. Even when I was just like a kid. When I was like grade 6. But then I came here and I was in grade 7. I think I didn't realize it at the time. I'm just thinking back. I was just kind of doing some brainstorm for this video. It was probably one of the most devastating things that ever happened to me. I mean, nothing dramatic happened. Okay, I didn't go through like, say, bullying or horrible teachers or school like oppressing me or whatever. None of that happened. I didn't go through anything dramatic, but it was just like, I used to be so good with words. That was my magic. That was my thing. But when I came to Canada, I had to speak English because that was the dominant language here, that's the official language, and I have to interact with other people in English. And all of a sudden, I just feel so handicapped. I just feel like I could not be myself anymore. I could not say anything that I wanted to say. It was so painful. I think even just the people who immigrated, or kids especially, I don't think they really realized how much language play a part in their identity, because to not be able to speak how you feel or what you think when you want to say something, you have it in your head, like in your first language, but you know that if you say that, nobody will understand what you meant. And that was what I was going through. It was like, I mean, I had a lot of things to say. Like, I wasn't like a particularly talkative kid. I wasn't, really outgoing. I was more like a shy and introverted child, as still kind of like an introvert. But yeah, it was just so painful because, like, I remember two memories came forth when I was thinking about this. One was the first day of class, and the teacher asked everybody to line up by the door because we were going to this other class for math. And I did not understand a word that he was saying. And I learned English before, but I just wasn't up to par. I still couldn't really communicate with a lot of people. And when everybody lined up, and I was just sitting on the desk, and everybody was looking at me, and I started packing my things, and my cheeks were burning red, and I was so embarrassed, and I just wanted to like smash my head against the wall or something. I was just like, oh my god, I'm just this kid who didn't understand what the teacher was saying. And I think maybe the Asian culture of conformity and, conforming with your class kind of played a part in that shitty feeling as well. But I just feel so bad that day. And I still remember, like, all the people just lined up there, and they were all looking at me, and they were all just preparing to leave. And they were just staring at me and just, like, kind of asking me to hurry up. And that was awful. And another memory that popped up was when I was in that math class. I think it was the same day actually, or maybe like a few days after. We were assigned seats so the teacher could memorize and kind of memorize their names and then just match their names to our faces. Um, there was this boy in my class, and he really wanted to sit next to this girl, and I think he had a crush on her or something. And and then he just kind of took my seat because I was sitting beside the girl that he liked. And I didn't want to switch seats with him, and he didn't even ask me, right? It was like, and I was trying to tell him that, can you go back to your seat? Because what I really wanted to say that was, I don't want to switch seats with you. Can you just go back to your seat? But I just kept saying, go back to your chair, go back to your chair. And I was just panicking because he wouldn't move. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't listening. He was just like this and just looking at the girl. And I was so devastated because I didn't want to sit there, and I just didn't want to give in either, because um, I was so frustrated. But then good thing, I remember this Korean boy, he came to my rescue. He was like, geez, just move. So that guy moved, and then and I got a seat. I feel so shitty afterwards. I remember I kind of experienced some minor bullying where I didn't know who did it, but people would just like, just take my books and just threw it somewhere, and I have to go look for it. But that was kind of the extent of bullying that I went through. But those were like, those are some of the memories that I just are really prominent in my head right now, because as a person, like even now, I like to internalize a lot. My emotional landscape is kind of like a hurricane a lot of the times. So when I was a kid, when I didn't know how to process all those emotions, when I didn't really know how to express it, when it was even worse because I didn't know how to, even like in my first language, I didn't really know how to put it into words. And now I'm just stuck with a new barrier, like this language barrier. I just feel so out of breath. I just couldn't really cope with it. So I just withdrew into myself. And I hated the fact that I was an ESL student. ESL, the word ESL, or the word ESL student, became so negatively charged. Like it was just like this evil word that, or this evil sort of piece of me that I did not want to be. I just wanted to ditch it. I just wanted to leave it. I just did not want to be an ESL student, because being an ESL student meant my English was bad, my language was bad. I have to go to a separate class when people were doing French to do ESL, and some people would avoid me because they knew I didn't speak English well, and they probably didn't think they could get a lot of conversation out of me. And yeah, that was shitty. Like, I think it was just like the biggest part of my identity, the biggest part of my strength, the biggest part of my talent or whatever. It was gone. Like, I just feel it was gone. It was just pulled like a carpet or whatever, pulled away like underneath me. And then I just hated myself so much because I just kept blaming myself. I was like, oh, maybe I could have worked harder. And I didn't work very hard. I got out of that ESL class, or just got out of being an ESL student. I did it in 2 years. And that was pretty impressive, but I didn't recognize it at the time. I just feel like this isn't enough. I need to go to the next step. So I just kept trying to improve my English. I read and I wrote. I just did so much work. And by the time I was grade 12, I was in advanced English placement. So I got into AP class. That was pretty cool. But even then, I just feel like I wasn't enough. I couldn't express myself enough. I couldn't be as eloquent as I wanted to be. I didn't have enough vocabulary. I still had these like little grammatical breakdowns where I would sort of say a sentence and I would sort of notice the grammatical imperfection in that sentence. And then I would feel like an ESL student all over again. Like even now, like even after so many years, more than a decade, so more than a decade since I immigrated here, since I was an actual ESL student, like I'm teaching English now. Like I went through a course that taught me how to teach English as a second language. I'm like a teacher now, right? I'm teaching English and ESL and grammar. I still have that fear of um, I still have that fear of being seen as an ESL person, or being an ESL student, or being criticized for, oh, you didn't pluralize this noun. Like, how dare you claim yourself to be an English teacher, or like a fully English speaking person. And just thinking about it now, I remember there's this other memory that I have. It's pretty recent. I was tutoring in a local library, and I was doing a poem um, with this. There was this white person. He was sitting right next to me, and when I was filming, I part of me was like, I didn't want to make this a race thing, but in many ways it is, because in North America, being a person of color usually means you're an immigrant, and that's kind of connected together. But that's not the point of the story here. But sometimes when I encounter a white person, I just feel self-conscious again. I would just feel like I'm not particularly like, it's not it's not like I feel like that they're being racist, but I just feel like an ESL student. I just feel like they represent the sort of perfect English, they mastered the language, they grew up here, they were born here, they grew into the language, they learned it organically, they just did it by osmosis, and it was just, their language is perfect. Like, they didn't even have to think about, for, well, not just white people, if you're a person of color and you were born in an English speaking country, and ever since you're a baby you're speaking English, so it's the same for you. It's you kind of grew into the language. So I have this sort of like inferiority complex. I just feel like I didn't grow up here. Maybe I'm not legitimate. Maybe I'm still an ESL student, and maybe I'm still an ESL. Maybe I'm still not enough. I will never be enough. Maybe there's always going to be vocabulary missing in my storage, and there's always going to be times when I mess up my grammar. And there are actually times when there's these little places where um, I would, kind of just grammar like just won't be perfect, and I would notice it because I studied grammar and I teach grammar, so I know how I messed up and everything. But the thing is that sometimes, even when I speak in Chinese, sometimes I mess up too. That's just kind of like when you're naturally speaking. Sometimes when your brain gets a little bit jammed, or when you're tired or whatnot, and your speech gets a bit blah. So that's not particularly, I feel like, just me being an ESL student. That's probably just me being afraid of being sort of seen as an ESL student. Anyway, where was I? This free-flowing story kind of got out of hand. Yeah, so I was teaching and there was this white person sitting next to me and he seemed, I don't know why I saw this, but he seemed like a writer. He had his laptop out, he was like typing some stuff. It seemed like he was working on a short story. He seemed like really into literature or something, or just, my imagination running wild in my head. And all this time, when I was hearing that student, that when I was working with that student, working through that poem, I just feel so judged and for my inadequacies. I just feel like, oh my god, this white person is looking at me, and then he's thinking like, oh my god, this Asian girl is teaching English. She's so incapable. Like, what the heck is she doing? Like, well, who does she think she is? All these toxic sort of imagined dialogue from other people criticizing me, and and it's, I hate to say this, but it's especially worse when I'm confronted or when I'm just near a white person, because it's nothing personal. It's just what that skin color represents. Is just, it makes me feel so afraid that people are going to see me as Asian, and Asian kind of means not white, and also kind of means English not perfect. Because I remember when I was growing up, when I was, I've been living here for like over years now, but I would still get people they would come up to me and be like, I would be speaking English to them, and but people would still be like, oh, do you speak English? And then I was just like, I was literally just like telling that person something like deeply philosophical, and it was like, sort of like, it was just no way that what I've been saying would lead him to question my English abilities. But just to be fair and just to be clear, this actually did not come from a white person. It came from an Indian guy, I think. And I think he was just like wanting to, I think he just wanted to lecture somebody, and he was like, oh, do you speak English? And he was like, oh, I was actually shocked that you kind of had this ability to express yourself. But anyway, yeah, that's another thing. So yeah, one of the things I really, really struggle with on my self-love journey that I'm starting to notice is my fear of being seen as an ESL student, as I said repeatedly, because even now I'm still so afraid, and I'm still, I think it's much better. It's slightly better now. I'm feeling much more confident in many other areas of my life. But sometimes I just feel like that kid again, that child who, that little girl who didn't know how to say what she wanted to say, and feeling so stupid for not being able to speak properly. And because of that, it was kind of like a negative cycle, right? Because of that, I was afraid to make a mistake, so I would just stop speaking. And also just feeling really insecure and not confident and shitty, so that kind of stopped me from speaking as well. So I'm getting a little bit emotional. So I just feel like kind of like doing making videos like this, like making tarot videos, on doing making YouTube videos or whatever. It's kind of terrifying and freeing at the same time. It's terrifying because, like I said, I didn't want to be seen as an ESL student, and posting YouTube videos means I'm putting myself out there, right? I'm kind of letting people see me, letting people hear the way I speak, and also letting people sort of examine my ideas and whatnot. And sometimes that's terrifying. That's why sometimes when I'm editing my own videos, just to cut out some of the lengthy ums and ahs, sometimes just to kind of make some like humorous effect, just to make everything more concise. Sometimes when I'm, or should I say most of the time when I'm making videos, when I'm editing videos, I would just be consumed by dread. I would just be like, oh my god, the verb tenses are incorrect here. Oh my god, the sentences are put together in a wrong way. Or I would just get so consumed by the fact, oh my god, I just can't stop hearing my ESL accent. I just can't stop looking at my own self as if like that is finally over. And um and yeah, and it's kind of terrifying because I'm always imagining that someone's gonna find my video and just comments like, oh, blah, blah, it's like, you made a grammar mistake at like 202, you know, like minutes and seconds, and then, oh my god, like, how can you be on YouTube video posting videos, you can even speak English. Yeah, it's just sort of that negative like criticism or loop, it's still in me, and I was kind of surprised to discover that. I was like, whoa, I've been immigrating, like I'm a Canadian or Asian Canadian or for so long, but it's still a fear that lives like nested deep inside of me. And yeah, it's kind of terrifying to put videos out, but it's also very, what was the other adjective I used earlier? It's also very freeing because I'm discovering that I'm kind of starting to see myself like my perfectionist tendencies. I'm sort of identifying what's sort of making me feel this way. And I'm it's freeing because I did a couple of videos without much editing, so just to experiment, I just wanted to see like if I actually didn't correct myself as much, if I didn't mind as much, if I didn't mind some imperfections in my speech or imperfections in the way I deliver things, what would happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? And I just did that, and I found out that some of the things that I feel like I should have edited out or whatever, like some of the things I might have gotten just to be like, oh my god, this is like a, you know, like a, my ESL like siren would be like, I would need to take it out or whatever. But the experience was freeing because I feel like, you know, having this sort of imperfect delivery actually wasn't so bad, because there are parts of my personality that were, it was really quirky and sort of cute-ish, and things I like about myself are just things that are me. When they're unedited, they're just more, it's just more natural, and it's I'm starting to discover that it's actually not as bad as I imagined, and becomes this portal for me to release my fears, and yeah, and also to examine this issue through storytelling. Um, yeah, and the story kind of went all over the place, but when it comes to, when in terms of self-love, um, I think even now, as I told the story, actually I feel much better. Just to let you know, I feel much better now that I filmed this video. I mean, like, I think I did it for like almost 30 minutes, and I feel much better now that I let it out, now that I've processed some of these hidden feelings that are nested within me. But I think these fears, even just some of the other fears, you know, that are attached to some of my other self-love issues, sometimes they come back. But now that I feel like I unearthed it, I uncovered it, they might come back, but now I just feel much more prepared in the way that, okay, I know what you look like now. Ego slash face slash, did I say face or whatever? Now that I know what that particular fear looks like, I know, oh yeah, I said face. I now know its face. I'll know how to deal with it, right? I'll learn how to, kind of just, I will know how to address this pattern, and I will know how to kind of just comfort myself and kind of deal with it like in the future. And I think the big takeaway of the story is that I think I remember reading this quote somewhere. Some of the, I think on this quote, I think this quote goes, on some of the days I don't love myself as much, but on some days I really love myself, or something like that. And I was really inspired by that quote, because I feel like self-love is so important, but sometimes, we're still human, right? You're still human, I'm still human, unless you're not. we're still human, so there are days when we just feel shitty, and there are days when we won't, or we are not able to love ourselves as much as we want to, and that's okay. Um, that's okay, but this is not an excuse for you to stay there, to stay in a self-loathing or self-hating zone. I think it's okay to recognize that in some days you just feel shitty, and it's okay to let those feelings out. It's okay to experience those feelings, because one of the worst things you can do to yourself is to hate yourself for not loving yourself enough. That's just paradoxical, and that's just not productive. But sometimes that happens too, right? So don't hate yourself on hating yourself because you don't love yourself enough. Yeah, so just don't add to it, right? Just experience it, let it go, or whatever. What was my point again? What was my point again? My point is, the big takeaway of the story is self-love. Like many people said before, like Killian said before, it's a journey. It's about showing up every day. It's about making a different decision every time you feel self-loathing, or every time you feel shitty, or it's about making the choice to be brave. I really like the word courage because it shows that you're taking your fear head on. And I think courage is it's a word that I really carry within myself when I am faced with self-love issues. Because when I look at the word courage, I feel like I don't need to feel invincible. I don't need to feel invincible. I don't need to feel like anything is possible. Like in the way that I don't need to feel like some kind of superwoman, or I don't need to have this grand connection with the divine. I don't need to feel super spiritual. Like I don't need to feel grand feelings to face myself in the mirror and tell myself, okay, you need to love yourself more. I don't need that. Like all I just need to recognize that, okay, things can be difficult. I'm having a really hard time right now, but I have the courage to see myself through. I have the courage to keep going, and no matter how hard it is, I can get through it. And I just feel like having that courage is the most important thing that I've learned in my own self love journey. It's like, sometimes you will wish that maybe you wish you've seen this issue sooner. You would have dealt with something sooner. You want to unravel this fear sooner, and you would have been free sooner. But it doesn't work like that, right? Everything has its own timing. You have your own divine timing. But when it's mature, when the the spiritual fruit is ready for you ready to be picked, then it is time to pick it. And and yeah, so you know it's don't feel bad for not discovering it sooner. Don't feel bad for not becoming who you want to become sooner, because nothing can happen sooner than there's no better time than right now. Okay, right now is always the best time, because it doesn't really matter what happened in the past or what happens in the future. The most important moment is right now. Are you going to make a different choice or not? And even if you don't make a different choice, even if you fail to make a different choice, are you going to keep making that choice? You know, it's it's almost like telling myself, don't take it too personally. Don't be so emotional. I mean, process your emotions by all means, but like, that's just life. You don't have to get so dramatic about it. Like, I used to be kind of dramatic about certain things, but now I'm just like, I can feel really dramatic, but that doesn't mean my life is dramatic. It's just like, it's almost like the universe has different chapters for my life, and when one chapter closes, another chapter opens. So it's sort of like themed, like in many ways. It's like my spirit guides are looking at the syllabus, and they're like, okay, Kim has done pretty well with this lesson. Let's move on to the next one. Actually, let's do this too, because I'm pretty sure she can handle it, and she's so much wiser now, she's so much more self-loving. I think we can throw more on her dish, and she will swallow them without complaint. um, yeah, so I think that's it. Like, I'm a little bit emotional, I'm tearing up a little bit. Yeah, I'm glad I told the story, even though it was like super incoherent. um, but I think I enjoy a lot of the moments about it. Like, even though it wasn't, if I wrote this story, it probably would have been much more organized. But this is another thing though. I would just throw out these disclaimers at the end of a video and be like, apologize for babbling or not delivering the perfect speech. So I gotta stop doing that. I gotta stop apologizing for what I said or what I hadn't said or whatever. I'm just gonna stop apologizing. Yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed my self-love story, and it's just one of many stories that I have in my collection of self-love stories. I mean, not that I have a novel series about this or whatever, but they're just different chapters of self-love story, like in my life. And this is kind of a new-ish chapter that I'm writing or rewriting or retelling or other story metaphors. But yeah, I should probably close this video with I accept myself for who I am, and even though sometimes when I'm like really tired or I'm feeling not particularly inspired, when sometimes my speech is just failing, I might have a few moments of English slips. Sometimes I almost feel like it's inevitable because my first language is Chinese. That's the organic language, or that's the language I learned organically. Yeah, that's the thing about learning a second language. It's like when you learned it, it's like you studied it and then you practiced it. It's almost like learning how to do it's like learning a subject at school. You can become really good at it, you can internalize a lot of it, but there's still this, it's almost like it's not, there's less of that in your muscle memory, you know? It's like if you grew up in a language, everything is your muscle memory. Everything is just like deep down gut, like just down in your root chakra or something. I don't know. It's just, I think it's deeper like in your brain, but when you do like a second language, it's there's like some parts of it that still sort of shape shift, and they kind of become misplaced, and they become, or they sort of drift around to other places, and then sometimes you want to find them in your brain, but sometimes you can't. Or when you try to find a certain word in your brain, the Chinese word pops up instead, or your first language comes to you instead. And then sometimes you get this bilingual mixture of a language salad that you're tossing out, and it's just really funny and weird. But yeah, I just want to say that if you have a similar experience as me, or if you just on your self-love journey, I just want to declare that I love myself, and there are gonna be days, I recognize that there are gonna be days when I don't love myself as much, when I'll be feeling shitty, but that's okay because I will still continue to love myself. It doesn't matter what happens, I'm still going to try my best, and that's all that matters, you know. It's about your desire to try your best, show up, and just do your best every single day. And don't think too much. Don't overthink things. Even if you feel like you're not being yourself enough, or you're not the person who you thought you were, or whatever, you're still you. You're still in there, you know. It's just things get complicated sometimes, and then don't beat yourself over it. And yeah, yeah. So this is my self-love video. I hope you enjoyed it, and And I think that's all I have to say for today. Oh, except for the fact that chamomile tea is the best. Okay, I actually like London Fog, and I like all different versions of black tea, and if you haven't tried bubble tea, you have been living under a rock. No, just kidding. If you haven't tried bubble tea, go try it. Get like half sugar though, because it's pretty sweet. I wouldn't say it's the most healthy thing ever, but it's super yummy if you're looking for like a nice, cool, funky drink with like little things to chew on in there. I strongly recommend it. And bubble tea is from Taiwan, so go try it. It's from my home country. It's really awesome. And if I may recommend something, honey black tea with coconut jelly or mango star jelly. Best thing ever. It's what I'm obsessed with right now. And some honorable mentions. Oolong milk tea. Get a half sugar though, because oolong's really strong. When it's really sweet, it just tastes disgusting. Unless you're fine with that kind of sugar level, but yeah. Also, green milk tea with pearls is good. But be careful though, pearls are made of just pure tapioca, and it's a killer for your stomach if you have digestive issues like me. Best avoid it because it's gonna give you a stomach ache. But it's pretty hard on the stomach, so chew everything properly if you do have some tapioca pearls. Okay, what else? Yeah, seriously, that's it. Yeah, go get tea, go get bubble tea. You're awesome. You're awesome. You're worthy. You deserve to be loved, and you are a entire universe in ecstatic motion. Yeah, I think I quoted that right. Yeah, yeah. It's a quote by Rumi, I think. Yeah, yeah. Alright, that's it. Okay, bye. Bye. See ya. See ya. See you later. Bye.